All right, good evening. It's Ryan Wood for another edition of World Softball TV. Kind of sticking with a nostalgia run of names who are jumping on the show the last few weeks. We've had Dana Dirks, Ross Ulrich, and now we're going to get with one of the most decorated players in Canadian softball history, 7-time gold medalist, 6-time member of the Border Battle, former teammate of mine, and amazing individual, Todd Cadenhead. Todd, thanks for coming on the show this week.
Thanks for having me, Woody. I appreciate it. It should be fun. I saw some of your interviews, and they're all well done. Interesting stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. Lots of people have been chatting about more along the lines of just hearing the fun stories of kind of the game, back before. I don't want to say love fest, but that's kind of the thing that I like to put the way the game is a little bit more than what it was back in the day. It was more of a war every time you step foot on the field back in the day. And now it's not kind of the same in my opinion, at least. And I mean, you can, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's not that it's not intense or anything else like that, but back when I first started anyway, there was a lot of animosity. You really hated the other guys on the team. There wasn't a lot of social media where, you knew everybody on the other team. There wasn't a lot of, everybody was admiring everybody and posting videos and, oh my God, that was a really good swing. Awesome. You can really hit it far and all the rest of that stuff. There was a lot of animosity when we played back then. And you still see it sometimes from time to time when you get, a couple of top teams kind of going at each other. I think, Quebec's got a few of those good rivalries in Ontario, and Aftershock and the O's seem to have a pretty good one right now going. But it was every game back then. It was a hell of a lot of fun.
It wouldn't have been far-fetched, back in the mid-90s into the early 2000s, where in a Canadian championship with whatever, back we had 12 to 14 teams back then, a game a day, there would be some sort of benches clearing. And it wasn't always fighting, but something happened. There was always some sort of drama that happened. And it didn't matter who the teams were. It could have been, and I was a part of one, being with Manitoba and Quebec, and it didn't matter, right? Like at the end of the day, it seemed like once a day, there was always some sort of drama.
Oh, totally. I'll bet you that there was a run with Pro Team where when we played Quebec, I'll bet you there was a run of 7 or 8 consecutive games where something would happen. I remember Damo went out in the field and ripped off Mario Huard's both of his sleeves off his jersey at second base over a call. And everybody piles out and everybody comes together, and then it kind of dissipates and you keep going from there. But it was pretty hostile back then.
Talk about, we'll get to Pro Team, but, you're starting Slowpitch. You live in London, well, Dames Centre, a.k.a. Dorchester, now, but grew up in Keswick, right? Talk about your grow up in Keswick and, your substantial move over ended up being into London area.
Yeah, I started out playing Slowpitch probably like a lot of people, where I was a small town and my brother started playing Slowpitch. I played baseball, and you make fun of him. Oh, you're playing law ball and everything else. And he came back home after a weekend, and it was late on a Sunday, and he was telling me about all the games he played, and I thought that was amazing because in baseball you didn't play 3 and 4 games during the day. I was 17 or 18, and I went and watched them play, and it was a team called Abby's A's out of Keswick, and they were a rec team, and they came second in SPM provincials when they had like 200 teams or 100 and something teams or what have you. And they got bumped immediately to C, and then I joined that year and played C with those guys, and I fell in love with it right away because the defense, everybody hit the ball, so you got a chance to make a play on every ball, and it wasn't boring. You didn't have a pitcher catcher or a really good pitcher going. You could play defense, and I loved that. And I started playing. I played with them for a year, and then halfway through the year, I got asked to play for there was a SPN A Nationals. I didn't even know what it was. I went and played that in Niagara for a team out of Aurora, and then when I was there, another team asked me to play the following year on an A team out in London. So
which team was that? Todd?
It was called Direct Hit.
Okay.
It was we were terrible. We had meetings, and it was hilarious because I remember driving to Toronto to go to this meeting, and great group of guys, like really good guys on the team, like Jimmy Galati and Cowboy was on that team. A lot of guys, and we had a meeting, and they said, well, we're a really good team. We're a really good team. We're going to compete with everybody and all the rest. And we would lose 2 games right off. There was no 3-game guarantee. We were 0-2 and out every tournament. So I drive to London from Keswick. We get beat bad in the first game and then get beat bad in the second game. And then I'd be at Sportsplex having a Long Island iced tea at 11 in the morning at the bar with nothing else to do for the weekend. So I just watched the other teams play. And we took lumps. And then halfway through that year is when Pro Team asked me to play. And then I said no. I said I committed for the year. So I'll keep getting beat bad for the rest of the year. And then the following year I'll come back. So that must have been 96 because 97 was my first Canadians in Sherbrooke.
Talk about Pro Team. You leave from a team that wasn't a successful one when you first got into it. You made the move to another team, and you were with that Pro Team. I mean, I remember playing against you in BC Canadians and around the 2002, maybe 2004. Oh yeah, around 2004. I remember playing against you because you had Pin on your team that week. And I remember Pin wasn't very happy with me chiseling one over the first baseman's head. He didn't understand that. So, if you don't hit the ball hard, you don't get the same level of respect. So I was just a young guy and had no knowledge of even who he was. And I remember mouthing off to him, and I thought I was going to die if I got close to the middle infield again. So needless to say, I tried not to get to second base.
Well, he would have liked that because Mike was he thrived on that sort of anger, and he'll invent a reason. He doesn't need it. He will get himself amped up he'll find something. And, you hit one over first, he'll use that for no reason other than to get himself going. We may probably have been losing or a tight game or something, and he'll just start getting angry and he just ramps it up. But it was whatever year that was. I think it was the blackout in Ontario was that year, and Pin came down, and we had a really good team. We scored a lot of runs, but we couldn't really put it all together. Pro Team couldn't really ever put it together at the Canadians. I think we got a bronze, maybe a silver. I think maybe just a bronze we got in Windsor with Pro Team. We had some really good teams, but we're more scoring, weren't as great defensively, but it was a gang of idiots. Like, it was the funnest group of people. And I'm coming from a small town, and all these guys are from Toronto, and, you're going down to the tournament, and then you're going out at night and having drinks and going to bars and stuff. And it was, I played shortstop, and Roy played third. And if anybody's watching this and doesn't know Darcy was an amazing character of the game. He would play third base. And if there was a left-handed batter up, he would sit on third base or kneel on third base and whistle at the batter to try and get him to look the other way. He would run through the infield like an airplane behind the pitcher to do something to try and get somebody to get off base. If it was windy and the wind was blowing in, he'd be kicking dirt and waiting for it to get into somebody's face. Like, he was just an unbelievable character. And we had a lot of guys like that on Pro Team. It was just a lot of fun. Great guys, good players, really good players. But we never really could put it together at the Canadians. We won a limbs a lot. I think we won 3 or 4 limbs with Pro Team, but we couldn't put it together at the Canadians.
So Pro Team ends up kind of stopping. If I'm not mistaken, a Pro Team and kind of an Orioles merger happened, correct?
Yeah, we had a
Pro Team. What? Yeah, I'm not. About how a Pro Team kind of ended.
Yeah, so Pro Cam came when Mark Turcotte came to coach us from Quebec, right. And he brought some money with a company called Pro Cam. And then we took Jody Hall from Windsor, and we had a really good team. We had, Rick Cam. We scored a lot of runs. We had a powerful team. We had a lot of homers back then, and really good hitters. And we would battle the Orioles all the time. And it was pretty much back and forth. I remember talking to O'Callahan one time, and Mike in we were in a tournament, a Super Series out in St. Thomas. And I was talking to him. I said, I think when we play each other, it's just going to be whoever has last at bats is going to win, because we're going to score. You're scoring, we're scoring. It's just, high scoring games seemed like it would always come down to that. And a lot of the guys on pro team were friends with the guys on the Orioles. And there was a lot of talk about trying to merge, and Lloyd's at the time was thinking about merging too. And they were asking some guys, and it was evident the pro team was going to kind of fold. So we made a deal, and Skip, me, Penn, Glenn Gillis, and Jake Rickstein left and went over to the Orioles that year. And that was 2000. I think that was 2001, because the first Canadians that we won was 2001 and Trois Rivières. I think it was 2001.
No, 01 was Medicine Hat. Trois Rivières was 04.
Okay. I can't remember.
I'm just here to help you.
Yeah. Well, I'm old.
Yeah.
So I'm an old guy now. I got a bad memory.
Well, you're not that old. You're, maybe in softball years, but whatever. So, but yeah, no, 01, I know the Orioles won in Medicine Hat. That was the year after Anthony Arts' team. What were they called? Orhouse. Yeah. So they, I guess, shocked the world the year before, or the year before that, in like 99 or something.
Yeah, I think that was 99. I remember that, because they only lost one. I see Terry Arts a lot at golf. I see Anthony Arts quite a lot in town here. And they always bring that up because they won that year. And the only loss they had was to Pro Team. We beat them on the Friday night in the round robin. We smashed them. Yeah. And the year that the Orioles won in 2001, I always tell Reg it's an asterisk, because Pro Team didn't go. We were supposed to go, and then Air Transit pulled the sponsorship. There was a miscommunication with Penn and Daniel at Air Transit. They were supposed to pay for our flights. And then all of a sudden we had no flights and no money to go. And it was a whole debacle. We went to the PIF that year. Skip cut out the Air Transit logo out of his shirt on the main diamond of the PIF. And the president of Air Transit was at the game watching. And, Skip, he was letting everybody know what had happened, and Daniel was pretty upset. And we cleared the benches with him that tournament too. That's when Lavi just shoved Jacques Millier at the PIF behind the diamond. And my God, I thought the crowd was going to come in on the diamond after that. It was crazy.
Well, what an amazing tournament the PIF is. I mean, you think of the 10,000 people that are watching that Friday night game, which is usually the local Quebec team, which would be Transat or whatever they were called at that particular moment. I mean, I remember playing the game before them actually against you guys, the Orioles. I don't know if you were with the Orioles at that particular time. It was in and around 2002, where I came with our Manitoba team, and we played that Friday night game. And I'm like, holy moly! Like what a crowd! Like it was, you just don't see that, right? Like it's the next closest thing would be Kitchener, where we had a bunch of people at the border battle, but there really isn't that many. It wasn't 10,000, I don't think.
No, when in the PIF in the heyday back when. When I first went to it, they had the headquarters, and the main diamond was downtown, and they had the home run derby there at night, and it was packed, like literally 10,000 people, maybe more. And to get into the derby, you had to be invited. And Penn was a really good friend of mine. Him and I were pretty close, and he did a lot for me. And I remember he would say to me, "Come on the diamond, and I'm going to hit, but come on to the diamond and come down with me," or whatever. I'm like, "I'm not allowed down there." He's like, "Yeah, no, you're fine. Just come." And I went with him, and it was unbelievable, because they had all the big US guys down there, and they were hitting it into the night. They would hit it, and you had no idea how far it would go. It hit into the intersection of that. And it was a lot of fun. Most guys had names on their bats, and they were like the guys that you would, hear about stories and things like that. It was really cool back then.
Well, it's crazy to think of all the really, really good players that, you've been able to play against over the years from the U.S., being on the border battle team for 6 straight years, being the captain of the squad, which is, how you got the name captain, and everyone calls you that. And, talk about, those experiences, obviously being one of the best power hitters in Canada. But talk about playing against the U.S. teams and where you felt you personally as a batter and a player stacked up.
It's funny, because I had played a little bit down in the States here and there, and I McColeman and I, Pin would always get me to come and play with Bololi in at the PIF. So there was like a lot of the main US guys, and he'd introduce me. So I knew a few of those guys, and I knew Rusty a little bit through. I went down to that Neil Teague thing in North Carolina with Gearsy. Yep. And I knew him a little bit, and then I went and played in another tournament in Florida, and I knew Jeff Wallace. I knew Jeff Wallace from the PIF, and he was an absolute monster of a hitter and a great guy. And he introduced me to a bunch of different guys. So I knew Rusty, and I knew a couple of the guys on the team, on the Team USA team. But when you get picked for Team Canada, you know this, Woody, it is a huge honor, and it's just one of those things. It's kind of surreal the first time you go down. Like it's it really is an unbelievable experience, and they treated us like professionals. And when you get on the field with those guys, there's a little bit of an intimidation factor, I think, but as soon as the game starts, I think it goes away. And when you're in a game, it's easier to kind of not have that sort of feeling like you're not as good or whatever. The way I always looked at it is, you can only do so much, and you can only hit it so far. And if you get a hit, then your hit's as good as, a guy that hits 700 miles an hour through the infield. And it's like, oh my God, look at that. But like to your point earlier, you chisel one over first and it lands in, and you're on base. That's the same thing. And when you're dealing with home run limits, if you can do your job and not hit a homer and then kind of keep the game rolling along. So I found the early years, especially, we didn't seem to be too intimidated by this, but the year we won, we were rolling. Like we scored all the time, and we were pretty confident going in that into the big game. We thought we were going to win, and we did. Like we really thought we had it. So I don't know. I just look at them as the regular guys. They're really, really good. They're fantastic. They're committed, and they're really good, but they're just, they do the same. They're trying to do the same thing we are.
I felt the same thing that year. Being probably the youngest player on the team. Just all the guys that were on that team, Kaylee, you, Gersey, Frank Henry, Falardo, just guys that, like, the mentality that they brought to the table was a killer instinct. There was no ever being, petrified of, oh my God, we're playing against Team USA. It's, we're just playing another softball game, and, they treat it like, oh, we're going to play against, whatever bottom feeder men's A team that we would play against at SBC, like, all right, we're playing against, and I'm not going to say a name because I don't want to stir up any crap, but any team that's not in the top of the point standings at Super Series, it was kill or be killed, and every guy on that roster truly believed that we belonged on the same diamond as those guys. Like there was never a doubt at all.
The chemistry on that team and the way that we came together really, really quickly was, I think, the part of the reason for it. I remember we would have huddles and meetings and talk about, we're going to score 40 runs this game. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about our number. That's our target. We're going to try and score as many as we can, and then we'll see where we end up at the end of the day. And I think Bug and Launder did a really good job of coaching too, because everybody got involved. They moved guys in and out. We had some really wild games in the back where we did score over 40 runs against good U.S. teams that were having great games. And we would hang in, and then came back and won. And we had some really big wins, and we just couldn't not score. We just kept scoring all the time. And no matter who came into play where, what position, or where in the lineup they were hitting, everybody hit. And it was a true team. Like the team, it was a team. It was almost like that team had played together for a long time, and then was coming into that tournament in a high kind of. It really worked out well. Chemistry was phenomenal.
Well, it's crazy to think that it was 11 years ago coming up this July. Like it's crazy to think, right? And but just so many great athletes, so many good guys. Like it was just an amazing experience. We talk about earlier, being on the field with Pin at some of those home run derbies. I mean, I've been able to pitch to you in some home run derbies myself personally. Sometimes you've had some really good, yeah, we did actually. You've been able to win, some derbies. You've been able to be one of the premier home run hitters in Canada for so many years. But the one thing that, and if nobody knows you, I mean, you're a big guy. You got lots of leverage when you're swinging. But the one thing that people will look at is how weird of a batting stance and swing that you have. Talk about like how the mechanics of that swing kind of came about. Because I mean, I don't think you started that way back in Abby A's men's rec days. How did that evolve over time?
You know what? I started that way with Abby A's back in the day.
Damn it!
Because I'm 6'4", 180, and trying to generate power. Because you can only, and what, the bats and the balls and the technology back then, you had to really kind of generate power yourself. And one of the things that I had a problem with too is I came out of baseball, so I was really quick. So I'd get out ahead of everything. So when I tried to stand normal and calm and everything, I was already opened up and had no power left. So one, I knew I needed to have a hitch to kind of slow me down. And then the other thing was, I'm not very big, so I have to kind of figure out how to generate some power. So I started for the leg kick was a timing mechanism, and then all the other stuff was kind of trying to figure out how I can get the maximum torque out to do it. And it took a long time to get it right. And then I hit a lot. Like I would hit all the time when I was younger to try and figure it out. And I changed grips a lot. Like early days I had, I remember I tried to go with no fingers on top, and then I was like 2 and 1. So I kind of figured out that I was a 3 finger on the bottom, 2 on top. I still had some control, but then I could get more extension out of it, and I could really snap. I was very wristy. So I started to kind of work on that, and I would hit and hit and hit and hit until I had it figured out. And then as I started to get bigger and stronger, I started to see really a lot more. I would be able to get a lot more power out of it. And back then too, like you didn't have 1-on-1 counts, so I would always waste one foul and try and hit it as far as I could because I liked hitting, so I'd rather hit one foul and then come back in. It's another thing that Pin used to get pissed off at me for. He thought I was wasting energy all the time. So. But so I just kind of kept working on it, and I had a lot of people tell me that it wouldn't work. And, I remember Mark Turcotte came to the Diamond in Slowpitch City one time to watch me play. And he said he was there to see whether or not I was good enough to go play for that Tiger checking team that they had down south. And so he's telling me, I watched you play and your batting stance won't work down in the south, and you're not going to be able to do it. And you can't do any of these things and everything. You got to change it. And I just never listened to anybody. Whenever anybody said all that stuff, I went and played in a tournament with Frank and Garzy and the Last Chance in Michigan before the Canadians one year. And Frank's like, you can't do that with the juking and the jiving with the U-trip stuff. And I'd go, I've played it. Yeah, it's fine. I go, it's 3 miles an hour. And really, even if I get out ahead of it, I can still hit it hard enough to be okay. I'll figure it out. And I did good. I hit, 7-something that tournament. I did okay. And so I just always stuck with it and just kind of believed that it would work. And I just, I didn't know how to do anything else.
Well, it's like other batters who, like Wayne Parent, who walks the box, and
he's
there's so many different. Yeah, but is he ever? Jeez, standing at the backstop and runs as fast as he can. But I mean, when you're 5'9", I'm giving him a couple of inches maybe, but when you're 5'9", you need all that extra little power. But yeah, it's crazy. Like a lot of people who maybe never ever watched you hit before, and they see you step in the batter's box for the first time, they might go, "Man, what is this guy doing? Like, is he kidding for real?" And then, pow, boom.
Yeah, I had a bunch of people tell me that before.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can only imagine the heckling that maybe went on in some of the games that you've played. I mean, I myself, when I was on your team, never heard it, but I'm sure that you've heard everything.
Yeah, I mean, it would happen a lot, but I love that stuff. I think I learned a lot of that from McColeman. You get mad that it's always good to have a reason. My dad always told me growing up, never give anybody else a reason, and I would use it. People would say, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that." I loved hearing you couldn't do it. You're not good enough or whatever. That was just one of those things that was great. And, even like when I was a kid growing up playing ball, I would go watch all the A guys when I played C, and then I would watch a lot of ball, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are great. And, eventually you start to get that a bit of an attitude that you can do it, and just you believe that you can, and you just keep doing it, and you go from there. And it worked over the years. I mean, it was, I never really had to change it. The only thing is that they started making rules at the Canadians where you had to have 2 feet in the box or 1 feet in the box, and Quebec would always complain about me all the time to try and get in my head and stuff like that. But whatever. It's just it never really worked at all.
Well, I mean, some of the rules that got brought in, especially over the last couple of seasons, a guy like you, 6'4", that, has a pretty good leg kick and a stride, they're trying to prevent that from batters stepping so far ahead of it. But, a guy like you, 6'4", a guy like House, who's, a very, very big guy. I mean, having this little line in front of the batter's box, is just, it was kind of just a ridiculous idea, personally, in my opinion. I mean, it didn't affect me personally because I'm 5'10", but for tall guys, it didn't make sense.
It was really not very well thought out, I don't think. But I agree with the concept of it. I think that it should be harder to hit. I think that the pitcher should have more of an advantage, and if you have to stay within a box in the batter's box, with both feet, start and finish, or something like that, I don't have a problem with that, because I think it's easy enough to hit, so you'll be able to figure it out. Like you can kind of get that out. And I think too, like standing at the front of the plate and taking that big stride into the diamond to hit the ball, especially now when you can really bring it through the middle pretty heavy, and you're a pitcher, man, there's times where it comes at you, you have no idea where it is. You're just covering up. And I think that that's kind of one of the areas that they could look at to say, okay, well, maybe we can figure out a way to not have it so advantageous for the hitter.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have an added advantage. Every time that I find a little bit of an advantage on the mound, and it ends up going away by the wayside because somebody complains and says you can't do that or whatever. I mean, I would love it if SPO in Softball Canada adopted the ability for pitchers to fake in and do that kind of stuff and change the arc limits from, I mean, it is kind of already 5 feet, but make it a legitimate 5 to 9 foot arc. And, I don't want to say allow speed, but just change something. I don't know, give the pitchers a little bit of life. It would be a lot of fun, but who knows?
I agree. I think that there's anything you can do to kind of, there hasn't been a lot of changes in the game for quite some time too. So, it would be interesting to kind of have a discussion with a bunch of stakeholders to say, what can we do to kind of, not necessarily just change it outright, but make some changes so that maybe it is a little bit more challenging to hit. I just think that, like, I played for a long time and it was always not very difficult to hit. Like, it's just, they're lobbing it in. And the only time that it was ever different is you went to SPN and they let the pitcher pitch from, 10 feet further back and they let the arc go. But eventually you kind of figure that out too. I didn't like it. I didn't like when you went back further and you threw it higher. That threw my timing off quite a lot. But, look at doing a bunch of different things to try and make it a little bit harder to hit, especially with the technology. It really, there's the bats are firecrackers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I can attest to your dislike of high arc pitching and pitching from second base. I may have thrown a ball or two to you from second base at SPN Provincials the very last year of Optimist, winning with 705. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, and you're lucky I didn't throw the bat at you. But I love all the 705 guys. So I'm a Keswick guy. So all the 705 guys, I love those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wasn't a born and raised member of 705. So, if you had to pick on somebody, you could have picked on me for sure. Talk about, you go from pro team, you end up on the Orioles. Orioles have great success. I mean, talk about the dislike a lot of times that people have for a team like the Orioles. Is it self-induced dislike because of just you guys win all the time? Or what is it that sometimes people just go, don't like those guys? What is it, in your opinion, that brought that that firm dislike by a lot of other teams?
Well, we embraced it first, and I think that helped drive it a little bit because we did like the fact that everybody was against us and wanted us to lose. But we had such good teams. Like I remember back in the days when we were fully rolling with that team, we were just so good, like top to bottom, and we had guys in and out of the lineup on the bench that were so good. So we'd win a lot, and whenever it would get heated or there would be comments or things like that, we had a lot of prideful guys on our team too that weren't afraid to stand up for ourselves and mouth off back. Like we're a lot of A-type personality guys, and we won a lot of games where we were behind and we came back to win, and we let everybody know it. My last Canadians was 2018, and the Aftershock guys came and sat on our side to cheer against us, and Ivan wouldn't let it go. And Ivan was just getting ramped up. And then he didn't start because he was on the bench. He came in and hit a 3-run home run and a grand slam. And every time he hit a home run, and I think it was a walk-off grand slam to win the Quebec game. We were down by a mile, and he just stuck it right to right in front of all the Aftershock guys. He was right on them. And we wouldn't always do things like that, but we would always come back a lot on wins, and we were pretty cocky too. And then we started, we would always come in together. We would always meet at the front of the Slowpitch City, and then we'd all roll in together. We'd always do the same things. We'd run out to center field and run back and do all the stuff, and people just started to not like it very much.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to win 2 golds with you. It was highlights of my personal playing career. The one thing that I will always say about the Orioles is just how organized the organization is. And I had Reg on the show back in the day, and he touched on the organization of the Orioles and, what it meant to be a member of the O's. How was it with the transition coming from a team that you were with for such a long period of time and then ending up on the Orioles? How was the transition being that new guy on the team?
It was great because our team was incredibly unorganized. We didn't know what was going on a lot of the times. And, so when we got to the O's, and we knew a lot of the guys, so it wasn't like we're just kind of new guys coming in or whatever. They were all, welcoming and all the rest of that stuff. And we knew we had a really great team. We were really good. So we knew we were going to be, competing for gold medals. And I had never won one at the time. So I was pretty excited about that. And we got off to really good starts with them. But it's an organization. It truly is an organization. Reg runs it like a company. And you get updates, exactly what's happening. He organizes as many things as he can, for hitting sessions. Early on, O'Callahan brought a sports psychologist to a meeting that we had out in Newmarket, one of the early years for the pro team guys. And the guy gave a talk about something, and guys were kind of laughing about it. But it was always kind of O'Callahan did a really good job organizing stuff because Reg was a player back then. Reg, a lot of people wouldn't know. Reg was a really good player. So when Reg ended up taking over, he kind of kept doing what O'Callahan was doing, but then he kind of ticked it up to the next level where he truly looked at it like he was a CEO of an organization, and everything was going to be defined. Your role was going to be defined. At the Canadians, you have a one-on-one at the beginning of the tournament. He tells you what your role is, what he expects. There's not any, misunderstandings or anything like that. And I think that's why he's able to keep so many really good players for so long. And he also can keep guys on the bench for so long that are starters on other teams. They like the organization. They like the fact that everything is completely laid out. They've got a lot of money. That doesn't hurt, right? They pay for hotel rooms, or they can pay for tournaments. And there's not, the first email you get from your new team isn't, hey, I need $500 for the year. It's, we're going to go out for dinner. I'm paying for it. And, let's chat or whatever. He does a really good job of organizing it. And that's why, I played for 2 teams, really. I played for pro team, and then I played for the Orioles for, I think I played in A for 25, 30 years, maybe, something like that. So yeah, probably 26, 27 years, something like that.
So, Reg taking over from O'Callahan. I remember, going down and playing with the Orioles when I was with the Henchmen in '02 in a tournament in somewhere in Ohio. I don't believe you were on the team at that particular time, but I remember going down there and I just couldn't believe how, because I never played with them before. They went down to a tournament in the States and picked me up on their way through because I was living in Cos's basement in Windsor. And, but it was the first time that I was like, trunk opens up and, here's jersey, here's a bat, here's this, here's that, and I'm like, holy moly. Like, that was like my first real experience of like how well softball players could get taken care of. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. And then the transition from O'Callahan leaving to Reg taking over. I mean, Reg and I never really touched on that on the show that he was on, but like, how did that kind of transpire?
Well, I think Mike had enough of it, and Reg kept getting injured, and he was having more say in kind of what was happening on the team. And then he took over, and you'll never see anybody take things more personally than Reg, especially early on. He's done better to kind of get away from that, because I remember we lost in Lethbridge, the Canadians. I don't know what year it was, but we were 10-0 in the round robin. We were rolling, and then we ended up losing out. The Yard won that year. Yeah. And he was just really upset about it, because it was, he had taken over and we didn't get success, and he takes everything that it's his fault and things like that. And he's just committed. Like, he doesn't take a day off. Like, if there's a chance to get a player better, or, change the lineup, or, do something a little bit different, or get a training session, get the guys together, do whatever, he's just all over everything. And that's why when he's with Team Canada, he takes that exact same approach. And when I was asked to be an assistant coach on that team, I didn't know, because when I played, I didn't have a lot of input. I didn't want to have any input on lineups or who's playing where or whatever else like that. I would do a lot of stuff talking to players, and when guys are happy or unhappy or whatever, things like that, they kind of help or whatever to keep the thing rolling along. But he was really receptive to thoughts and ideas about what lineups could look like and who to do. Like, he's very receptive to that. I was almost a little surprised by it.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought that you were that's why you're the captain. I mean, you could tell if a guy wasn't getting playing time, and you do what you could to keep him happy or whatnot. And I mean, yeah, that was your role. And I mean, I think that you were kind of like that player liaison between Reg and the players if they needed to. I mean, Reg is always open, and you could talk to him if you needed to. But I mean, you were always that sounding board for a guy if they were pissed off because they weren't playing, or they were having a shitty week and weren't playing, and they knew it, but they felt they should play, right? So, I mean, there were so many times where I'm sure that happened over the years where, you're at Canadians and one of your supposedly quote unquote better players is having an awful week, and you get to the point where you just go, you know what, bud, I got to sit you. And I mean, it's not an easy decision, because I mean, coaches always have the relationships with players too, right? But sometimes you got to take that relationship aside and do what's best for the team.
Yeah, and you can tell when a guy's he's just not going. There's something, you give him a rope, and some guys get a lot of rope because you're a horse and you've been doing it forever. Yeah. And it's harder. Like, you can say it's easier to coach the Orioles, but when you got Bolt, and then Grubby and Kaylee and me and Garzy at 2 and Grubby at 5, and then Rook and Al and Roach, and like on and on and on, the guys in that lineup, you can, if a guy's off a little bit, then you really got to be, it's a hard thing to do to take that guy out or shift the lineup around, because you're moving everybody around and stuff. And he did a really good job of massaging that for a lot of years and making sure that everybody was still comfortable and confident in what they were doing sometimes, because everybody's going to have bad tournaments and bad days, so he did
hardest
really good.
Hardest lineup to hit in, right? I mean, if you're a 1 to 10 batter in that lineup, I mean, the pressure to constantly always do the right thing, right? I mean, everybody can hit a home run. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but just having that pressure to bat that lineup. And being one of the guys who, batted in the middle to the bottom of the lineup when I did play in the Orioles, but it was a pressure cooker every time you step in the box, because you're I don't want to say there's pressure, but there is pressure, right? And it's how you handle that pressure is what makes you successful in being a contributing member as an Oriole, right? So,
yeah, I mean, and we had a lot of confident guys, and I was really lucky because I always hit in between two really good players every time that I was with the Orioles. I was always in a really good position, but I always talked to the guy ahead of me and the guy behind me, and we had a plan. So the three of us had a plan. So, Kaylee would hit 3 in front of me for a lot of years, and I hit 4. And there'd be times where I'd tell Kaylee, "You're feeling it, hit the homer here. I'll chisel one backside. I'll figure out how to get on." Or he would say to me, "Look, you're on it right now. I'm just gonna go middle here, and you hit the next one out. And if we're starting to get low on homers, and then if Grubby was behind me or Garzy was behind me, because Garzy was great, he could do anything he wanted. So you said, what do we want to do here?" We always had like a really good plan in those conversations about what we were trying to do. And that's what I always try to get guys to do whenever, talk to the guy ahead of you, talk to the guy behind you, but don't tell anybody what to do. And I guess you got to be careful a little bit because you don't want to screw the guy up who's hitting, but we never had those issues. We were just, supremely confident we were going to do whatever it is that we were looking to do. And you just go and do it. So you hit the homer, I'll chisel backside.
Let's talk about some of the historic moments in Canadians for you, and some of the ones that stand out in your head. You've played in 20 of them, and you've had great success in a lot of them. Let's talk about the success stories. You've kind of just mentioned one where you had a 10-0 round robin, and went bang bang, if I'm not mistaken, in Lethbridge, and that was 2008.
Was it okay?
In Lethbridge, yeah. But talk about some of the great times. It doesn't have to be a gold medal win, but just talk about something that just stands out and pops in your head.
Well, the last one, 2018 was my last Canadians, and we won. And that was a really good thing. We had to double dip the Oilmen in their own in Lethbridge. Coming off of that one we just talked about, that we had a great team and we didn't win it, and we were getting chirped like you wouldn't believe. Like the worst people in the world were at the park. I can't stand Lethbridge. It was unreal. It was like we're playing games and they're yelling at us no, they're go back to Ontario. We pay your taxes anyway. And it was really it was unreal. I'm playing first base and somebody was calling me Gandalf and making fun of me because I was an older guy. And Steele was pretty much hounded by a guy the entire week, followed him from diamond to diamond and would just lay into him. And he was there with his wife and his daughter. And he was like, "I'm not playing Canadians anymore. Why would I come back to put myself through this?" And the Oilman guys are just all phenomenal people. And they're afterwards talking to them, Zanolis are great friends, and Jermaine, wonderful guy. There's just a bunch of great guys. And we talked afterwards. I'm like, I can't believe what was going on here. But then when we finally won it was a really good moment. I think for the most thing, you go to Canadians and you win and you lose. The wins are great. Obviously, the first one you win is amazing because it's, you've tried so hard to get there and you finally do it. And that was in Triple Creek, Trois-Rivières. We won for the first time there. But I always look at it as, going to the Canadians was such an exciting thing. You get there, we'd always have a team meal at the beginning. You go to the park. So you land, you drop your stuff off, you go look at the park, you go have beers, you see people from across the country that you haven't seen all year. Those are the things that are the most memorable stuff. Seeing guys that you really truly like and you get to kind of hang out with a little bit. And then you get into the games and you do your best to play. But really, there's not a lot of times where you remember hitting a home run to win, or the last play is made and you win. Those are all really cool things. But I think moreover, it's about, the people you meet and the times at that tournament itself. One team wins, but there's a whole whack of people there that are hanging out and having a great time. And that's why they keep coming back, because of the friendships and the people that you get a chance to meet.
So, earlier in the show, we talked about how it was a love fest. right now in ball. But I mean, that love fest was day one. Everyone shows up, you have beers together. But then as soon as that tournament started, those beers that you had at the beginning of the week it didn't matter. Like it was game on, game time, and let's go.
It was, I'll tell you what, I remember my first games. I couldn't believe the intensity of all the games. Like it was a Monday round robin game in Sherbrooke, and it was like a battle royal to win that game. And I think we lost, and it was against a team that we thought we should have beat. And it's like, man, every one of these games is going to be such a grind, and there's a lot of, yelling and screaming back and forth in that. And you have to be able to figure out a way to get yourself up for all those games. And, you're right. It was exactly that. There wasn't a lot of, a lot of the friends you meet are through, respect from playing the game hard. And then afterwards, when it's all over, having a beer, seeing them after and stuff. So one thing the Orioles did all the time is they made a point of, we connected together. We were together. We played the games, and then we left together, went to the hotel together. We didn't like it or want to have 3 or 4 guys over at the park going to catch games or hanging out with whatever. We wanted to stay together as a team as much as we could because of that. And there were some battles, man, I'll tell you, the Canadians just really ramps it up a notch. And not to say that it doesn't now, but I just think there is a lot more interaction that is from social media and the availability of those sorts of things to make it a little bit less intense in some of the games.
Yeah, and I mean, I miss the uber intensity and the craziness that comes with it. But we all get older, I guess, and technology has changed a lot of things about the way that we do things in life, and that's just the way that it works. There's lots of different changes that you've experienced in the game. Starting off in Keswick, probably using single wall bats and some harder balls. Moving into the composite era of early 2000s, swinging the inertias and all those crazy bats, and then becoming a Mizuno ambassador for 12 years. Talk about how the Mizuno thing came about, because I mean, everyone always call it Captain Mizuno. Todd Cadenhead. Talk about how the Mizuno kind of all came about.
You know what? It's first of all, an absolute fantastic company with great products that I think are underrated. But anyway, I was approached. Tony Carnelis actually was at Warden Patch, and I think it might have been Warden Patch or went to Home Run Sports. I can't remember the timing of that type of stuff. It must have been Home Run. And so he said to me that he was talking to Dave Bartlett at Mizuno, and they were looking to sponsor somebody, and they were talking about sponsoring me. And Tony was doing he had like a bat thing going on in Etobicoke, and like a bat war thing, just basically put all the bats in the fence and go and hit it. So I went out and hit some bats, and I was hitting the Mizuno bat. And I remember somebody came up to me and says, "What do you think about the Mizuno bat?" And I really like it, actually. I think it's a good bat. Guys don't really use it. I said, but I think it's good. And I was hitting it. So I said, I grabbed it and I took some swings with it, and I was hitting it really good because it's BP, right? You're loose and you're just leaning on stuff. And so they ended up calling me and said, we want to sponsor you. And at the time there wasn't sponsorships. Like I didn't know of anyone that had a sponsorship deal. I had a brief deal with TPS, and it was me and Leo. It was really an odd one. I don't even know how real it was, but so I met with Dave Bartlett, and he presented a deal that was just essentially what they were trying to do for me. Was they said, look, we want to sponsor you head to toe, and just anything that you need to play, we want to give you. So there's no strings. You don't need to promote things. If you do, it's great, but we want an ambassador in Canada. And this is what we're willing to offer. But we're coming out with a new Frenzy bat, and we want you to hit it first. And if you like it, then we can make a deal. So I called my brother. I left Mississauga. I called my brother, and I said, hey, I want to hit some balls. I got these new Mizuno bats. It was the new Frenzies that just came out. And I went and hit them, and I really liked them. And so I remember talking, I go back to Dave, and I said, Dave, so, because I knew McColeman was always sponsored all the time. And when he got his bats, he told me all the time, like he would say, okay, I want a 29-ounce end load, this much barrel, this much weight, and everything else. So I said to Dave, I go, so how does it work for bats? Can I get whatever weights and everything else that I want? And he goes, I don't know. You get whatever goes at the store. And I'm like, okay, that's great too. So then he would just, we signed the deal, and he goes, we'll do a 1 year deal and see how it goes. And they treated me like gold, like, and their products, like their Diamond Sport products, like their apparel and their clothing, their gloves are just amazing stuff. Like, it's really good. And they gave me a set of golf clubs when I signed with them. So, which was a nice perk at the time. And every year after that, we just continued our deal every time. And I never switched over with anybody else. I had other offers and other opportunities to go and switch over and do different things. And you know what? I was always very loyal to them because they were very loyal to me. And I still got a great relationship with them today. You know, I was 10 to 12 years, something like that with them, and still communicate and talk with them today. And I golf a lot now, and all my stuff's Mizuno, and they're great. And, you know, their products were great. Their bats were really good. I think that they got a little bit underrated because they weren't used as much as Mikan and Louisville and Easton and that, but they were really good bats.
Well, I remember in and around the early 2000s where they had the Orange Crush and the Mizuno Tech Fire. That to me was when they were really, really at the top of their game when it came to the technology component, because they were ahead of everybody else, right? Like, I think they were the first kind of real composite bat. I remember playing in Saskatoon. I was playing co-ed rec SPN Nationals with my family team, and we walked into a sports store in Saskatoon, and this Mizuno Black Tech Fire was sitting on there, and I went, this looks kind of cool. We picked it up and grabbed it, and we're launching balls 300 feet over the fence in the complex in Saskatoon at Gordie Howe Park. I couldn't believe the exit speed. It was unbelievable, and I was just a kid then, and I'm like, man, this is nuts. And I mean, we played pass the bat for the rest of the weekend because we just used the one bat for the rest. And then, you know, you get into the Orange Crush, and then they started to kind of change it a little bit. They got into the red one and then the blue one, but Fury, the Fury. But then, you know, they came back, and I think that Frenzy is kind of when they slowly started to get themselves back, because in fastball, their bats were always well received.
Yeah,
like the Japanese teams are still all straight decked out Mizuno, as far as I know. And I remember playing in the World Championships against Japan, and every single guy was swinging a Mizuno. So, you know, I never really got behind Mizuno after the early 2000s because, I mean, there's just so many options out there. But, you know, it was great that you kept with them. And because you did, I mean, I'm sure that you helped sell them lots of bats.
Yeah, you know what? It worked out really good. Like, the Frenzy was great, and then the Frenzy 2 came out, and it was terrible. And,
yes, that's right.
And I remember I was talking to Dave Bartlett at a sports show, and we were talking, and he was saying about, you know, the next year I was with Mizuno again, and he goes, you know, Todd, he goes, you played that entire year with that bat, and it was terrible. He goes, we know it was, and we fixed it, and we're doing different things. He goes, but you didn't switch out. You didn't do anything else. You didn't change. And I was like, well, when I say terrible, it wasn't as good. Like, it didn't get better from the year before. It wasn't as good. It was still a good bat. Like, you could still play and hit fine with it. You weren't going to, you know, do whatever. But like, they were really happy that I had stayed. And like I said, they treated me like gold, and they didn't have any expectations. It was just a simple, and, you know, my daughter, like, I met my wife in Slowpitch, and her daughter was playing baseball. And I would tell David, like, my daughter's starting to play baseball. And then they would send a bunch of Jenny Finch baseball stuff to her. And like, they've always been really good and great. And you know what, they're just great people, you know, so it was always good to deal with them, and it was easy. And I didn't want to disrespect, you know, you see a lot now where guys will bounce around. They'll go from whatever deal's better to the next deal. And I think a part of the game's changed too, because everybody wants a sponsorship deal. When I was playing early on, you played to win games. You played to win tournaments. You did everything you could do to win. That was the only thing that entered into your mind. And, you know, now it's, you gotta watch what you're doing, because you may be able to get a sponsorship. You may be able to get a deal with somebody, or, you know, if there's another team being put together, or even with Team Canada, sometimes, you know, there's some things with Team Canada where guys can be a little bit more individual to say, look, I got to show myself here because I want to make Canada, or I'm going to leave this team to go play for that team because it gives me a better chance to play for Team Canada and things like that. So Team Canada has done I think it's been a big plus overall for softball, but there are some things that, causes some challenges too.
Well, I mean, you could look at the Canadian Championships, and there are certain players that go up there and, have a great week and have 20 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
But, of the 20, 16 of them are solos, and you go, oh, well, I had 20 home runs at Canadians. But meanwhile, what were you doing the 20 home runs for? Right. Like, I think there's definitely some individual accolades that are trying to be padded to try to give themselves the best opportunity to be on Team Canada. And hey, look, I think Team Canada is amazing. If there was any opportunity to help, I've had my time, and it's time for somebody else to experience it and continue to experience it. But in terms of the opportunities that Team Canada presents, it's different now. You talked about it earlier that you were treated like a professional. All right,
mm-hmm.
It's not the same, right? Unfortunately, we just don't have the budget up here in Canada, right? Back in the day, it was all looked after, your flights, your hotels, everything. Now, it's a lot of it's on the player, and there's nothing wrong with that. I paid money to play softball pretty much my whole entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you've put money into it. To save yourself money, you just decided to build a house in 5 minutes from the park. So
yeah, smart.
Easy. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, but it's a little bit different now, right? Just from a budgetary standpoint, it's not, I don't think it's the same as what it was from 2009 when it first started until in and around, the first Kitchener border battle.
Yeah, it's changed a lot, and it's tough because look, I remember the first year, and year one, our jerseys and what we got out of it versus what the USA got was completely. We had the worst jersey ever. Our first year, we had this gray second jersey or whatever, and the US had all multiple uniforms, multiple hats, everything else, and we didn't. They had the program came out and they had their photos and bios, and there was a list of 15 or 16 guys on the team from Canada and that. But Team Canada, I've talked to Brand Show a lot about this, and the thing is that from Softball Canada's perspective, it's a one event deal. There's a lot of stuff that they do for world championships, for fastball, for men's and ladies, and then junior programs and things like that are year-long endeavors that, where the money goes to. And I understand that there's not everything to put money into Canada. I would like to see a little bit more money into the Canada program. I'd like to push back on the US a little bit on some of the things that we can. And I know Mike agrees too, but Mike's very good at, organizing it and being, I don't want to say political because it kind of infers that he falls back a little bit, but he does a good job of doing the best he can for us. And, pushing back a little bit from us, I think would go a long way. I know that when I first started being an assistant coach, the first thing that I did is I started getting on the umpires a little bit and the tournament organizers about umpiring, because we would never get a call. And they're buddies with the US guys. And I went into the umpire room with Craig Kress, and I gave it to all of them. And I said, you don't have to be best friends with these guys. They don't need any help. And you give it to them every time. And, so trying to do those sorts of things. And I do wish we had a little bit more money for the program, and we're able to do a little bit more, like, name the team, bring them somewhere, let them play together a little bit, and then go to the event. But it takes a little bit of effort to try and raise some money. And then, within Softball Canada rules and uniforms and sponsorships and how does that work, it's complicated. So, but I think that going forward, it would be good that we could, take everybody else out of the equation, let Canada take care of Canada, and really try and run a first-class program would be really good for the game, I think.
Well, I know it's, ASA border battle, but I think it would be amazing if we could figure out a way, and I would love to be involved in this, is put together the roster of Canada's best players, and once a month, can't be every weekend, but once a month you go down as a team, You play in whether it's a U-Trip conference event, or you go down and play in the McQuaid's tournament where there's so many good ASA teams, or there's so many good ASA tournaments in Minnesota, North Dakota, even out east in Boston area. I mean, it costs money, but I mean, if everyone just got together and put their heads together, and not to take anything away from Softball Canada, but they've got other things that are priority. Like you said, it's a one-off event, so it needs to be spearheaded by it doesn't always have to be put on Tony or Reg or who. Us as players are pretty resourceful that we can figure it out. And okay, let's find some coaches and let's make it happen. And you know what? I think that it could truly be done really well.
Yeah, I think it would be a worthwhile thing to do too, and even start with one. So first of all, I was always a big fan of picking and naming the team as early as possible, because I always thought it was a really big honor and a thrill to be named on the team. And every time you get picked, it was a really big honor. Now, it's very difficult to pick the team. I've been involved in picking the team, so you're never going to always get it right. And there's guys that miss and everything else like that. It's challenging, right? But name the team early and just name it and say, okay, look, we're going to do it first right off the hop. And at the beginning of January or even November, or after the year's over, pick the team and let the guys have that more lengthy part of being a part of that team, but then give an opportunity to try. And they did do that a few times to try and name it in January so that there would be maybe sponsorship opportunities or things like that to get people involved in it. So that's one. And then I would try and get them to do a tournament away somewhere. Try one prior to get the guys together. Everybody who gets picked, it's a thrill, and it's always good to get that group together. And then, start small and then try and do that. I think it would be incredibly worthwhile, and bring as much attention to it as you can so that you can make sure that you're including everybody and that you're trying to get the best players. And, it's a hard thing to do because there's good players all over the place, and it gets challenging when you try and only pick 15. And the first 10 are already decided, probably. I don't know if it's maybe that way now still. I mean, it's been a year off and things like that, but it's the first bunch of guys are pretty much, who they are. But after that, it's chemistry and fit and role and all that. But the more you can get them together, the better they're going to do, for sure. We won 2 out of 12, right? Is it 12?
Yeah. No, I think we started in 09. I think the last one was 19. So was that 10?
2 out of 10?
2 out of 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's great for us. I mean, it's better than 0-10. Lots of people would never even think Canada could beat those guys in a game, right? So, and think of all the times that the Futures team was beat by Canada. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's no slouch of a softball team at all, right? So, I mean, those guys can all play as well. And, I still have nightmares about Kitchener. Striking out, Helmer. That game.
You have nightmares. I blew my shoulder up in a home run derby and couldn't play.
That's true. Good point. Yeah,
but you did
good points. Yeah, I've clipped the video, and one day I'm gonna get him, and I'm gonna go. You know what? Tell me if this wasn't a strikeout or not. And we'll see what happens. But
I'll tell you what, but it happened every year. I mean, the first 2 years when it was on ESPN, or maybe 3, but the first 2 on ESPN, there was strikeouts and everything. Every time you look at the guy, I do it here. I look back at the umpire. They get calls all the time. Like they just get whatever they want. That's, they don't need it. And they're not asking for it. It's not their fault. They're not asking for it. They're playing the game. I mean, which is, they're grinding it out too. And they take a lot of pride in it. Like you want to talk about a guy who's into it. It's Helmer.
Oh boy.
You should have seen how pissed he was when they didn't want to test the bats again before the final game, the one year that we were down there, and Brancheau made them. And man, you talk about poking the bear. Helmer was so angry.
But why though? Why is he mad?
But again, I think, guys that are super competitive like that, they'll take anything they can to give themselves an advantage, right? And he was like, "Oh, really? We can't only beat you with loaded bats, or we have bats that are thing. You don't think we can win, or we're not good enough." And then and it escalates.
Yeah.
I did it all the time when I played. You give me an inch, and I would start to get angry about things. And then Pin used to do that all the time. But man, was he hot!
Oh, I bet. I wish that there was a video camera on that situation. Let's talk about some of the best players you've played with. You've played with so many good players. If you could take your best 5 that you've, it doesn't even have to be talent-wise, 5 best players that you enjoy playing with over your course of your playing career.
Who
and why?
Well, there's different things, right? There's teammates versus players and that. But I mean, McColeman's the best. He's just absolutely the best player. When I played, he was the fastest runner, the best outfielder, the best infielder, best average hitter, best power hitter, smartest player. He was by far better than everything. And so you start with him. He was in a class in his own. And then like guys that I played with that were really good, like Gersey was amazing. Gersey was an amazing player. He could play great defense, had great hands, underrated defensive player, I think. But it would do everything, great teammate, do all those sorts of things. Cayley was super talented. He could hit it a mile. Grubby could hit it like crazy. He had a lot of fire too, like he would do whatever he could. Bolt was great. Like you look at that, even our top lineup there, all those guys were really good on the Oriole teams back then. And, Steele obviously is very good right now. Like he's on it. He's playing really well down south. He's doing good. Teammates, a million. Johnny Evans. Well, you look at Johnny Evans as a teammate and what he can bring to a team and what he can do to help. Great player, great hitter, great defensive player. I played against him forever. I was playing against him when I was 19. And he was I think he was playing at a Tottenham or some Alliston, I think, something. And I was in Keswick and we played against each other. Great teammate. Ivan Payne was always a really great teammate. He would sit on the bench on a team that was super talented and play, and he'd come out the bench and hit home runs and win games and just be a great teammate, So there's a lot of those guys, and I'm always going to get in trouble for not mentioning guys, but I always tend to go to the older guys too, like because I'm an old guy now, and I tend to look back. Like I like the fact that if the guys now look back at the players before and have respect for it, like Mark Regan and Dale Casperson. Like you look at Dale Casperson, he's still playing right now, and a lot of guys will play against him and not realize that guy was an absolute stud for years. Like he was lights out. Scotty Watson was unbelievable for years. Great teammate too. Like he was an awesome guy that way. I bumped into Reg last week in Etobicoke and I was talking to him. All the old guys went out and hit, and it was all the guys that I used to play baseball with, Paul Facto and Steve Brady and Danny Vella. Like Danny Vella, how great a teammate is him. Nabber, all the pro team guys were just amazing guys, right? So I'm super lucky. Like I got to play with the best people, that I think, are still friends today that, and I think if you play the game for a really long period of time, you win if when you're done, you've got a bunch of friends you can talk about. Like you and I are friends. We don't talk as much as we could or whatever, but we're friends. We've known each other a really long time and had a lot of really great experiences. For me, that you win, like when those things happen like that. So I work with Gersey, I work with Fricky. I see Tony Harris all the time. And Tony ran some great teams. Tony's another one of those guys that's kind of been involved with such a long time. We get together and talk about stuff. You never talk about the games, hardly ever come up. It's the the fun times that you had and the funny stories. And I saw you and Russ talking the other day on the interview, and you guys are laughing about some of the stuff that you used to do and stuff. That's where that you had a game. And then I think if you were any good at the game, somebody will tell you. You don't need to tell anybody else. And the other thing is that just be a good teammate. It's not that hard. It's the easiest thing in the world to do is be a good teammate. It's almost impossible not to be. Just be a good guy. And then you can, you'll get way more out of it.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And, it could be the biggest knock on my personal career, and this isn't about me for a show, but I mean, it wasn't until you get older that you take the experiences that you have and you look back and you go, oh man, I should have done this differently or should have done that differently. And you can't, right? So, if you're a player that's playing now, be a good teammate, buy into this concept, buy into the structure. Even if you don't like something, suck it up, deal with it, and be loyal. And those are the advices that you can give to help somebody that's coming up in the game. I think that hopefully that helps.
But I would say, Woody, too, the other thing is that you're talking about yourself, and I played with you and I played against you, and you could be an absolute dick, but that's good. That you got to win. You got to want to win. Yeah. You can't. It's great to be a good teammate and all the rest of those things. Those are all great things, and everything else, and kumbaya and all the rest of that stuff. But when you're playing, you need guys that are going to grind it out and try and win and fight tooth and nail. And sometimes those sorts of guys, Steele Lewis is one of them now, who has a hard time with the failure of others and things like that. But he's trying and his best to win. And when you played, you were trying your best to win, but you made other guys better and you pissed other teams off. And those things are really important too. It's not just, be friendly and all the rest of that stuff. I think you need to have a good, healthy amount of spite and anger when you're playing the game, because it should be a battle. When you start that game and you get into that game, you should be trying to win at all costs and grinding it out. And then, afterwards, be a great guy, but be a good teammate and all the rest of that stuff. But you know what? Like, grind it out. Like, try and win. Like, never mind the niceties and things like that. I used to fight with Mike Hook all the time. Mike's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come easy, right? I mean, winning's not easy. It takes your whole roster to pull the rope the same direction. And sometimes you've got dead weight pulling that rope and you're not winning the tug of war. And, I got to coach hockey for, 6 seasons in a row and had tons of success. And, I brought the intensity every night. And if players didn't bring the intensity, sorry, you're just not the right fit. And, intensity is a huge thing. And you either kind of have it or you don't. And some guys just don't have that intensity. And, maybe that's why they haven't, reached the peak of where maybe they should be in this game. But, we could talk about that till we're blue in the face. Where are you at now? In terms of ball, retired, done, no more ball. I'm sure that Reg is going to try to convince you to come out of retirement for the 38th time. Where's your head at? How's the shoulder? I mean, I know, I remember playing Canadians with you and you having to be, ice baths in between games. And I know your body has taken a massive beating over the years. How are you health-wise?
I am a picture of health.
Okay.
I am in fantastic physical condition. My shoulder is, I couldn't throw from the fridge to the stove. My surgery didn't go great. I need a shoulder replacement for my throwing shoulder. Yeah. But I was able to come back and play first base and move the ball around, and it was great doing that. Not coming back. I am retired. I'll play with the Oriole alumni guys because it's fun. It's a great group. Seeing the guys from all over coming back. Like we played the Elims, 35 and over Elims, and we took over the grill at Slowpitch City. Tony got Fricky bought a bunch of great steaks, and we took the grill over and we had a bunch of steaks and while the main event was going on, the undefeated game was happening. The brawl with Sitch started. And so you know what, I'll do that. I'm 48. Guys are talking about the 50 and over, and I don't know if I want to do that. I played a lot. I did a lot, and I grinded at it forever. It wasn't easy for me, and I tried to ramp up whenever I played. It was, it was will over talent a lot of the times, and I'm golfing now. I'm terrible at it, but I have fun with it, and good group of guys that we hang out with doing that now that are great. So I'm not going to play again when it comes to competitive. I'm not going to go and play another Canadians. I don't think, can you still play? Sure, you can still play. You can keep going if you want, but I'll play a little bit of here and there. I want to stay at the park a little bit and watch some things. I like the Team Canada stuff. It's always been a big accomplishment and level of pride for me. So I like doing that. I like being an assistant coach, helping out with that program. I get a little bit of heat because I'm not a coach, but I'm actually a coach on that team. And a little bit of, I get some pushback on that stuff a little bit, but my role is more to kind of, just see if the guys are going or not and give Reg some input and things like that. And I think I really enjoy that part of it. So I'm going to try, if I can stay involved in that program, I will. And if it takes something, effort for me to go to the park to watch things, and I'll do it because I like that program a lot.
Well, I mean, I think you're a great fit to be that assistant coach, and I'm sure maybe one day they'll even give you the reins. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer down the road. Do you need to coach a local team to have the abilities to be the coach of that? I mean, that's up to the decision makers, but I'm sure that there's a team or two that maybe are from the London area that has maybe reached out to you about opportunities of being involved, but who knows how that would all pan out.
I know it's a lot of effort to go and coach. I don't know. It's literally 6 minutes from my house. I know that I could do it. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I have a low, it'd be interesting to see. Maybe that's something that I will do. Yeah.
Could you ever coach against the retirement club? Like, could you ever be a coach against the Orioles? Do you think that could be in your wheelhouse?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Crushing.
Go heads up against Reg.
Yeah. Reg is overrated when it comes to a lot of the things that he does coaching wise. He relies on his assistants and that.
Fair enough.
We'll show him for what he's worth at some point. It'll come to fruition at some point. I would, what, I'd have no problem with it. Reg and I are, we're best friends. I talk to him all the time. He would get a kick out of it, I think.
Well, I'm sure he would. It would motivate him a little bit. I mean, Reg is one of the most competitive guys I've ever met. If you're playing a game of checkers, I guarantee you Reg is going balls to the wall in that checkers game.
Well, I'll tell you what, he would hate it because it would be like you're disrespecting the Orioles by going and coaching another team. How could you put that uniform on? How could you try and beat the Orioles and stuff like that? It would be quite funny.
And knowing you as long as I have, I could see you doing it just because of that aspect in its own right.
Just to have that conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Seems ideal. So
yeah, I would definitely do that.
Nice. Well, Toddy, I appreciate you coming on. So many good stories, and I mean, you could talk softball till you're blue in the face because you've been around for such a long time and have so many great experiences. And being around a long time doesn't make you old. And I'm glad to hear that the golf game is just as good as mine. And hopefully this summer we can get out to the course. Happy to take you to Tangle Creek up here in Barrie, where I have now joined as a member. So,
oh, look at you, fancy! Well,
yes,
we also have a club here in London that we're belonging to. That's pretty fantastic. Nice. So, we should do that. And you know what? Keep doing what you're doing, Ryan. It's I do watch them, and I find it interesting stuff. And I think that the more you do for the game and get some sort of, talking about it and getting things going, maybe it leads to some stuff. And I think you're doing a really good job with it. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And down the road, we'll get you on when maybe you're wearing a uniform of another team. That could be could be interesting.
Yeah, get me and Reg at the same time. It'd be great. We'll announce
now it. Now the rumors are going to start flying. Your phone's going to blow up tomorrow or next Tuesday. Phone's going to blow up, and here we go. What's going on, Toddy? Is this happening? Anyways, it'll be interesting to see. But good, man.
Well, to me when I see him.
Yes, you should do that. Let them know, hey, I'm looking at exploring my – we're going to all world Slowpitch is coming together. Awesome. Nice. All right, Toddy. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. And we'll definitely stay in touch, and love to get out for a round of golf this summer for sure.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, pal.
All right. You have a great night.
Yeah, you too.
All right, Todd Cadenhead. It's crazy how the time just absolutely flies through the show. Talking about all the great stories and the experiences that so many of these great softball people have got to play. The game is just continuously growing. I know one of the topics that I wanted to get after, but we were just running out of time, was more of kind of comparing the two eras between now and the Orioles teams that he was on earlier compared to them now, but didn't get that. But we will get after it another time. But for World Softball TV, I'm Ryan Wood. Thanks again for watching every Tuesday night here on amateursport.tv. Have a great night.